What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. This week we're back on the 1970 C10. If you guys watched last episode, we did a ton of rust repairs. We got our firewall fit and also bead rolled. We got it back into the truck. So this week we're gonna be jumping into the cab. We're gonna be finishing up our transmission tunnel, making all of our little pie cuts to get our transmission tunnel to our firewall. That looks like a whole lot of fun. We're gonna be transferring our template over to some real metal, getting that all fit up. We're also gonna be final welding our floor pan. Our firewall will get welded in, as well as we're gonna be making some modifications to our bench seat. So we got a whole lot of metal work to do, so let's get to it. What I think I'm gonna do first is I'm gonna go ahead and cut these floor pans where they start to go up, where the original transmission tunnel is. I'm just gonna do a slice on both sides here and over there, and then I'm gonna flatten these areas out, get it to match our firewall. There's a huge gap back here, so I'm gonna bring this down to our firewall, flatten this out as well for our transmission tunnel to have a nice spot to sit on. I'm just gonna bring this over to our welding table, hammer and dolly all this nice and flat. Once I get these two done, I'll get them back in and start on our transmission tunnel. I'm probably gonna go ahead and bend up a little angle and clico that onto the back here to give our transmission tunnel something to sit on, even if it's temporary. Give it a nice little spot to rest on. We got both of our four pans put back in. We got this whole section on both sides flattened out. I'm gonna end up adding some metal back to this to meet up to my firewall on both sides. So now these are back in. I'm gonna start cutting my transmission tunnel. I'm gonna start with my top piece. So I got my little Miller handheld plasma cutter out rather than using this thing. So I got that out. I got an angle, the way I can get a nice straight line. That should give me a nice straight edge. All right, so now we're moving on to our side pieces. I'd like a flange on the top to mate up to our top piece. That way, you know, it gives us something to sit it on, clico it in, make sure our angles are all good. I've already verified the angle of the transmission tunnel, which is on this little doohickey here. So what I gotta do, since our brake is not long enough to fit this piece, I gotta cut this in half. So I'm gonna cut it here on both sides. I'll take it over to the brake and I'll bend this top flange. Once I get my flange bent, I'm gonna take our two front pieces, our sections from the front where I cut off, lay those in there, just make sure everything jives before I get to this back. This does get a little bit more complicated. Once everything's verified, it's all kind of clicoed together, then I'll have to weld this back together. All right, we got our transmission tunnel kind of mocked up in there. It's definitely gonna be a little long, so we're gonna have some trimming to do. It honestly seems like it's sitting up a little higher than I wanted it to. So before I go any further, I'm gonna go ahead and mock up our transmission, our motor back in place. We don't want it to sit up too high, and the reason being is because of our bench seat. You know, this is a very high area right here, so you're gonna lose a lot of the structure of the seat. So I'm gonna put the transmission, the motor back in, and then we're gonna adjust this and bring this down a little bit lower. I did make it long so I could cut off the length and bring this whole section down. It's sitting a little long, as you see. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pull this top cover off. I'm gonna bend a flange up at this angle to match to our top of our firewall. I'm gonna shift these side panels back, and then I'm gonna go ahead and cut off a little meat off the back. What we want is our corner of our transmission tunnel down here to match with the corner of our firewall right here. I'm also gonna go ahead and fill in these two gaps. We're gonna take a little break from work to talk about the merch we got for this truck. We're super excited to show you guys. Head over to our shop, check out the rendering as well as what we named this thing. Let us know what you guys think in the comments below, as well as all the other rad stuff we got in there. So buy some merch, help support the content. All right, now we're starting to take some shape. We got our little corners plated back in. I put a little tack in each corner of our transmission tunnel. So now that's set in space. There's plenty of room above the transmission to the bottom of the transmission tunnel. We can put our fingers through there, that's good. Now I can start moving on, man. I went ahead and bent up a couple little tabs. I'm gonna use these to hold transmission tunnel in place as far as the height goes. So I'm gonna clamp these onto the transmission tunnel, cleco them into the floor like so, and that will give me the right height. So I'm liking the way the front half is situated. It's sitting pretty good. We got a nice slope going down. We got plenty of clearance on our transmission to the top of our tunnel. So now I'm gonna go ahead and start on the back section. I'm gonna revert back to my templates. I'm gonna go ahead and cut the rear section off and get these fit in here. We're pretty good. There's a bunch of stuff going on back here. We got this hump here. This is our bench mount here. And then we got this bump going up and back down. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut my templates back out off of our original template and see if we can't work these a little bit before I go ahead and cut our metal. I already kind of have the template transferred onto the metal, but just gonna kind of double check everything before we go cutting it. All right, now that we got our transmission tunnel in place, it's certainly not done, but now we're gonna shift gears a little bit and we're gonna get looking at the bench. The reason being is, you guys ever had upholstery done and custom stuff like this? We're adding bolsters and all kinds of cool stuff. So it's gonna be very similar. So we got some fabrication work to do on the skeleton of the bench seat. So right now, what we're trying to do is kind of get an idea of how much we're gonna have to cut out of the frame and do some welding and some fabricating to make it work. So we're gonna use these 2x4s to bring the bench up a little bit and see if we're gonna be able to get over the top of this hump. Yeah, looks like it's still hitting. Yeah, we don't want it hitting because then you're gonna feel the vibrations and stuff and it'll be rubbing on it. So the front, we got plenty of clearance. So that's perfect. So what we'll have to do basically is take out more of the framing out of the back of the seat than the front of the seat. Our mounting holes are all lined up, so that's gonna be right where the bench is gonna go. So I'm gonna make some marks with some marker, and when we take it out, we know we're gonna have to come up at least an inch, maybe an inch and a half. Might as well give ourselves a little extra room. Keep in mind, we're gonna be throwing some sound denter insulation on the tunnel as well as carpet, so you know you're probably gonna end up building it up 1/4 to 3/8 of an inch. So we got the bench laid out here on the floor to give you guys an idea of what we got to do. Basically, we're gonna be removing the upholstery, we're gonna be removing the brackets with the slides, taking it all apart. Then we're gonna be getting into this framing in the back. We're gonna be cutting it, we're gonna be notching it, we're gonna be adding some support, and then this bench is gonna get sent off to E3. You're gonna be adding a whole bunch of like bolsters and stuff to make it more feel like a modern bench, putting all new cushions and everything in it. And they're gonna be wrapping it with a really nice brown leather, which I think is gonna look awesome in this truck. But these are my marks from where my tunnel is. So I'm gonna transfer the tunnel mark to the back on our frame here, so I know exactly what to cut out. There you go, that's a wrap on the bench seat. We got it all sectioned out, capped up back off, support. Everything you see is pretty solid now. So this is our transmission tunnel in the front. There it is in the back. So now we got plenty of clearance to go around it. Now we're gonna get this thing sent off to E3 Upholstery so Lee can do his magic. All right, now that we got this thing all fit in here, I'm gonna go ahead and pull it out. I'm gonna make a couple tiny little modifications. We're hitting here on the floor. I got a gap here. It's sitting a little high in the back. It's not hitting my tab. I'm also gonna cut a little off of here. I'm gonna add some metal back into this section, and I got the same little mod to do on that side. So I'm gonna make those modifications, then I'm gonna put it back in, and then I'm gonna see just how much we gotta add on to this section here. Before we go any further with the transmission tunnel, it's time to go ahead and blow this all back apart so we can get our floor pans welded in. So the first step is get everything removed. I got a line marked here on the firewall to the floor pan. We're gonna cut the firewall so that way it's a nice butt seam. So we're gonna take it all out, get it all out, and drill some holes in here for some spot welds and get all this stuff welded in. And then we'll be able to weld into the transmission tunnel. Moving on in the cab, we got our floor pans welded in to our firewall. I still got a little bit to do over on the driver's side, but I got a pretty big gap. So we got welded on the inside. We're also gonna be welding it here on the outside as well. Before we weld our firewall panel here to this panel, we do have some more work to do. At this point, we got our bench mocked back up in there. We got plenty of clearance for our carpet, our insulation, and whatever material they're gonna be adding to the bench, like the padding and the leather. So we got plenty of clearance in the back and in the front. So now we're gonna go ahead and take out our bench sheet. We're gonna get our tunnel welded to our floor. We'll get that done, and then we will start working on the attachments from the tunnel to the firewall. Getting all this closed up, and then we'll be able to get all that welded up real nice. All right, so we're making some progress here on the C10. Our tunnel is basically done. We're still gonna do a little more blending on the driver's side. I still gotta fill this gap right here. We're also gonna be welding it from the outside as well. So probably gonna get this thing up onto the lift, and then I'm gonna be able to TIG weld this seam, and then I'm gonna come back in here, grind some of this nasty metal away, and then I'll probably TIG that as well. And I still have to spot weld our firewall to the cowl, to the cab, but we made some good progress. My next step is I'm going to start cutting some of these triangles to get it to close out our firewall. And I kind of came up with this. Basically, I cut up some welding wire on the exact measurement, and then I hot glued our corners. So now I can transfer this over to our cardboard and make sure it works. I've never done this before, but I think it's gonna work. So let's give it a whirl. All right, so I must say the welding wire template trick worked out real well. This piece is ready to go. So I'm gonna get this tacked in. And luckily, I think my templates from this side will work on the other side. So we're gonna verify that here shortly. Once we get that side done, then we'll just be able to get our top piece, and we'll be able to weld all this up and call it a day. transmission tunnel done. Romeo is gonna finish welding it up. He's gonna be blending it, making it all look pretty. Meanwhile, I'm gonna be jumping back outside of the cab to get our cowl finally welded on, as well as making any last adjustments to our firewall, getting that welded on as well. I'm gonna try to add like a little piece of 1/4-inch trim on the top, kind of give it that stock little lip that turns back. Not really sure what that does, but either way, that's kind of how they are stock. So I'm gonna add that. I'm gonna be pulling this off. We're gonna be doing some seam sealer in there, adding some primer to it so it doesn't rust out on any of that new metal we added. Now the cowl is welded on in place. Now we're gonna add some seam sealer into this little valley here, make it nice and watertight. And then my next step is to jump onto the firewall. We're gonna be cutting a 1/4-inch strip on the plasma table. I've never done that before. And then we're gonna try to weld it back onto this sheet metal here to kind of give it that factory edge. I just feel like that'll clean it up, make it look real OEM-ish. So let's see if Dave's gonna be able to cut a 1/4-inch strip on the plasma table. Firewall is officially attached to the cab. It's all spot welded on. At this point, I'm gonna come back inside with some more seam sealer, and I'm gonna hit the gap between my firewall and the existing flange. It's pretty tight in most areas. There is a couple areas where there's a tiny gap, like right there. You can't really tell, but you could fit a business card through there, which means water could get in there. So now I'm gonna just throw a bead of seam sealer on this back edge. However, once I install my little 1/4-inch strip around there, it's definitely going to stop any water from going down. I could also seam seal it on the inside, right up in there, which I'll probably do as well. So I get that seam sealed. While that's drying, I'm going to jump inside the cab and go ahead and start working my welds on this flange that goes all the way around. And then we'll come back outside. We'll start tacking up the outside and start welding on our flange on the top. All right, now we got the cab of the truck on the lift. We're gonna do a little maintenance and some house cleaning underneath. Just gonna do a little grinding underneath here, clean up some of these edges, do a little bit of welding, weld these main brackets on these little supports on here. Just a couple little things underneath here, but we're looking real good. All right, we got the firewall all welded in. Our transmission tunnel's complete. While I got it up on the lift, I'm also kind of prepping the underside of the cab. We went around and sanded down any rough edges. Right now I'm cleaning up all the underside of this thing, getting any paint or dirt or undercoating. I'm pretty sure there's some undercoating underneath here. So I'm trying to get that taken down a little bit so we could go ahead and seam seal the heck out of it. You know, all these seams will get seam sealed just in case there's any little pinholes we may have missed. We're also gonna go ahead, while it's on the lift, we're gonna prime the raw metal, and we're gonna be spraying some of that Poppy's undercoating. This is a very dirty job. As you see, this is just years and years of dirt, paint, and all that great stuff. So I don't know, man. I think this is a pretty good time to call it quits on this episode. We've done a ton of work in this episode. We completely hand-built our firewall, hand-built our transmission tunnel, got all that fully welded in. We got our cowl welded back on. Everything's seam sealed in there. I'm feeling really good about that. So we hope that you guys are enjoying this truck build. I'm very excited about it. We got a ton of work to do. Next episode, we're gonna be hammering back down into the cab. We're gonna be working on our custom dash. We're also gonna start doing some paint, and like I said, all that undercoating, all that stuff will get done in the next episode. So, hey, as always, thanks for subscribing, thanks for watching. We'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.